I'm just waiting for the inception moment where we have a Chat GPT scope of work in response to a Chat GPT RFP from the consultant. And it's just literally.
You're cute.
You're cute.
You.
Oh dear, she's stuck in an infinite loop and he's an idiot.
Part 2 of Crestron Masters, where we talk about AI and how this is going to impact programmers moving forward. All that and more on A State of Control. A State of Control, episode 117, Silent Intern. Welcome to A State of Control, an AVNation podcast that highlights the control programming and automation aspects of the audiovisual industry. My name is Steve Greenblatt. I'm your host. Thanks for joining us today. If you haven't listened to our previous episode, please press pause now and do that. That was episode 116, and that's the first part of Crestron Masters, and you'll get to hear some familiar voices, but this is going to be a continuation of that episode, and we're going to talk more about some of the technologies that were discussed at Masters, and some also, let's talk about where things are going for programmers. But if you missed the last episode, we talked a lot about the business relationships, the highlights, the overview of what happened at the event. And this is an event that's been going on for quite some time, and we've been covering it for many episodes. So please check out our previous episode, which will lead into today's discussion, and welcome back the same guests. So before we get to share those with you, I get to say hello again to my partner here at A State of Control, Rich Vergoza. How are you, Rich?
I'm doing good. I think you waited 10 years to be able to say that in the intro. It's like, if you're at this episode, pause now. You know, that
being cool
awesome.
And everything.
I'm serious. That was State of Control history right there, man. I'm loving it. I'm doing good. This has been a great conversation. In fact, you know, we've had some in between the recordings. We also had some other great conversations that I'm looking to pick up here and memorialize it. So.
Excellent. So we get to welcome back our two guests, the first of which has a new job and in a new company, and he is Dave Hatz from CTI, the VP of Machine Intelligence. Welcome back, Dave.
Awesome. Great. Glad to be here. Glad to keep going on the discussion, and I'm excited to sort of talk about how my new role at CTI actually was, a big part of the discussion at Masters, frankly. So I'm excited.
Excellent. And last but not least, we get to welcome back our friend of control of State of Control. He is Russ Noble from ClearAlan, the principal there. Welcome back, Russ. Thanks for being with us again.
Thanks very much. Third time on the show, third time's a charm.
Excellent. One of the things that we talked about in the past episode was we teased how programmers' roles are changing, and how we talked about AI, and we talked about different modern programming languages. Those are things that we've covered on this show before, but it's important to see how the conversation is changing at events like Crestron Masters, because in the past, it used to be very much product-based. It used to be very much about, these are the things that you're going to need to learn to be able to program our systems. And now I think programmers have the opportunity to take some things into their own hands and have more transferable skills. So, Rich, this isn't a new conversation. We've talked about this for some time, but where do you see things going for programmers, and how do you see their role evolving?
Well, I think we talked about this several times, is that as the group of existing control system programmers ages out over a period of time, and the new programmers are coming in, we're going to start seeing, hopefully, the development of software developers, right? Of people who are coming in that they're, typically, it wasn't always, but when you started out in this 30 years ago, you didn't necessarily come from a computer science background. You were potentially the owner of a company, or I started out in sales, And literally the reason why I wound up falling into programming was because my programmer had a family tragedy and the job needed to be done. And I locked myself in my office for 2 weeks and taught myself how to do this stuff. I mean, there were odd stories of how people fell into it early on, that it was just like, people were like, I never intended to do this. It just happened to be fun. And it was a different subset of being in the AV industry. Right. And, you know, I've always said that, you know, especially on the Resi side, you know, our story used to be the only reason we got into our business is that our bands weren't making any money. So we had to get a day job. But this group of programmers coming in are far more versed in, and they've grown up in a software is eating hardware world. You know, if you're anywhere over 30, 35, you still had your roots in a hardware-based world. You still were dealing with physical connections between devices, and far simpler rules between the devices. You now have this acceleration, you know, of what we've said of it being a software-based world, that your rules are different. Your rules of interacting are different. Just the principles of it, you know, the principles of signal flow and how we used to deal with the analog chain is different than how you deal with it with the digital chain, and is now different with how you're dealing with it in the network chain, right? So there's been that progression of the industry and the softening of the hardware structures into software structures, and because of that, the group coming in, they're not hamstrung by how we had to do it. You know, they weren't hamstrung by 16K of RAM that you had to put on a PROM chip, and, you know, you had only so many times that you could write it, right? Those, I mean, you tell it and it's just, you know, I mean, it's like, I tell my son that, and he was just like, well, God, did the Ice Age happen when you were programming still too? I mean, you know, did you fire up your computer with coal? And so it's exciting in that respect, in that they are not bound by the rules that we were bound by. But the hardest part is, how do you teach them? Because we still come at it from, you know, finite resources, analog connections. You know, there was a way that we did it. There's a way that we do it. But the new developers that are coming in, and I spoke about this actually when we were off air, but I'm going to speak about it now. The issue that we have in the AV industry and the AV controls industry is that we're still not technically part of the tech sector. The tech sector has a whole lot more zeros in terms of the business that they generate and the ability for companies to generate in order to pay their developers that amount. A software developer coming out with their 4-year degree in CS is first going to look at the tech sector, because the tech sector is going to pay. Maybe they find their way into AV because they find that they love it and everything else, but you're hoping for that, right? You're not banking on the 90% of graduates are immediately going to want to come to your industry. That's a reality. And that's a lot of times that we don't talk about it because, you know, again, like I said, we've got that identity crisis, right? You know, people who are in this industry are passionate. You know, is there a lot to be said about that? Yeah. However, brothers still got to eat sometimes. And so one of the core issues for control systems programmers is that either you take somebody who wasn't necessarily a control systems programmer, and maybe was a tech, or maybe was already in the industry, right? You find the pool that you're in, and then you train them up. Also a gamble. So, you know, or you bring somebody in from the outside who doesn't have AV industry knowledge. You're paying the premium for them because you're competing with whoever it is .com. And you have to provide an attractive package for them. And so the issue now is, it's not necessarily the people, it's not the skill set, but what are the tools that you're going to have available as an organization in order, one, for you to be profitable and stay in business as a company, but also acknowledge the fact that, yeah, you know, you're potentially going to be priced out, you know, for something else. We were already talking about it. I mean, look at all the industry magazines, the commercial magazines, they talk about, you know, the talent train and how to, you know, ways to get people to come to the industry and, you know, all of these things. And it's interesting because, again, like I said, the prior generation, yeah, we all came from AV backgrounds for the most part. We were associated with it. And then control systems programming was just an adjunct because you didn't have to sit there and hand solder a DB25 or something. You're like, okay, this is cool. I can just do it on a laptop. I'm good to go. I'm not, I don't have to crimp BNC connectors. But because we're moving into this software world, it's a dilemma we face, in terms of how we're trying to figure out where the talent pool comes from. How can I afford that talent pool? How can I bill out? How many projects do I need to do? What kind of projects do I need to do? Can that, and on top of it, can I train people up enough in order for them to do the projects to be profitable? There's a lot of conversations outside of just programming, outside of what we're just saying with Masters, which is this talent pool that we have coming in. We've got to do better at deciding how we're going to train them up. Because it's great to always say, oh yeah, we'll bring in software developers and we've got all of these tools that you're used to. Well, that's great. First thing they're going to ask you when you interview them is, what's my pay? I'm getting 3 offers out of school, or I went over on this site and I've got 4 offers as just basically, I'm the person who updates the code for the little widget for my Chrome tab. That's my job, and I'm getting 6 figures to do that. What do you got? Well, we have a great environment and you get to see cool stuff and listen to cool things and all kinds of great gadgets. It's a great story to tell, but it's it's tough because also in this industry, right? It's what's the goal? Always, to try to maintain as profitable as possible, and then not worry. And then they get mad that, they bring somebody in and they move on to someplace else. It's a big part of where we are at right now. And again, I appreciate the segmentation that we were talking earlier, Russ, about being able to use real software developer tools. That's great if you're already a software developer. That's not our problem. Our problem is, how do we either attract software developers or train software developers? Because if you're counting on somebody coming fresh out of a 4-year university with a computer science degree, you're the runt of the litter in terms of the job offering hierarchy that's coming out. And it's okay to admit that, because we do provide something that is very special and fulfilling and great stuff, but we suck at our message about that. It's funny is that sometimes when we have these conversations, I have these own inspirational moments in my head. I'm going, oh crap, I am doing it wrong. I didn't even think about that until right now, and went, okay, we got to pivot. And I think when you get everybody together at Masters, and if you take a look at it, and I'll ask Dave and Russ, right? How many of them how many would you say are under 25?
Yeah.
How many are under 30?
Not enough.
So you've got 40 somethings on up who were the last generation of AV techs who, programmer left. We've got this boardroom. I'm going to send you to, C101, C102, right? Go ahead and get this done because this job's got to get done. And now all of a sudden, voila, programmer, right? On their business card.
It's interesting, Rich, you say that, because I remember being, having a discussion. I don't even remember who it was with, and it was one of those breaks between sessions, and we were looking down the hall, and the two things we were commenting on are, there are more representation in that under 30 crowd, but still not enough. And there was slightly more diversity in the audience. But again, not anywhere near enough. And, we were sort of having very similar discussion to this, Rich, of, who is that target of, who should we be targeting? Should we be targeting that 4-year CS graduate that's going to be looking at one of the famed, companies, the Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, Netflix, Google? Or is there a different audience of developer or aspiring technologist that would be, the appropriate or the more appropriate candidate to bring in? And, again, there's no right answer to it, but very much echo what you're saying there, Rich, that we've been talking about this for more than a decade. I look at, at CTI, we have, a big focus on internships, a big focus on education. We're making strides, and yet we haven't solved it all the way. We're working on it, but we haven't solved it all the way. And I think that's something just as an industry, not even just Crestron, not even just this community of programmers, it needs more attention.
I think it's a difficult one to solve too, because I think the number was just over 1,100 certified programmers worldwide when they put the slide up at Masters. And I know this year was my first year teaching at Masters. It was my diamond year, and one of our first sessions when we got together as our teaching group, we talked about who the audience was. I want to know, who are we talking to? Because the diversity of knowledge, of skill sets, from someone who's recently certified but a CS student to somebody who's been in the industry for 40 years and has more experience than I have hair on my head. And how do you fulfill all of their needs when you're instructing? It's quite intimidating, I got to say. And when we're only 1,000 people at certified that would be attending or could be attending Masters, it's a pretty expensive undertaking to solve education plans. So kudos to you, Dave, and CTI for putting those types of programs in place. And I know that there's Rich Sasson has been talking extensively about the training initiatives that he has underway as well. And I think that's incredibly important, because for such a small industry, we need talented resources. And I know we're going to be talking about AI a little bit further on this, but I think that introduces a whole new realm of learning gaps and learning challenges that we're not going to see for another 10 years, maybe.
That's a great lead in, and I'll echo that too. I think that the programming community isn't necessarily I think it's indicative of the industry as a whole. What you see at most events is that same lack of youth and lack of diversity. So it's just it's consistent, unfortunately. but that is it could be problematic. And I think what I'd like to explore a little bit, and Russ, we could start with you on this, is that is there a resistance to change because of that? We are looking, and we talked about in the previous episode, there are modern tools that are being presented, and there are different and new and ways of doing things, and those things are better. To Rich's point, we got, I like to say that we got used to being able to make artwork with 8 crayons, and now we have the full set. And but do we take advantage of it enough? And if not, why?
Change is always inevitable. Right, and it's those that thrive are those that can adapt to change. So until if you resist the change, you've found a place which could be very profitable for yourself, could be very successful, but is terminal. So change doesn't have to be massive either. Change can be small and incremental, and you'll still get to the same place. I know in athletics training, they talk a lot about natural talent versus learned talent. And the learned talent always exceeds the natural talent as long as the work is applied. So you have to be willing to change, and you have to be willing to learn. And when you do, you can be extremely successful at it. So I mean, we talk about the Masters and its importance and attendance, and part of our team for going there, the value is the education, being taught some change, but then also hearing from our people, from our community, some change, influencing change in ourselves. How can we be doing things differently? How can we always be doing things better? I talk often in our team about me kicking over the apple cart, probably to the frustration of many of the staff, but I love kicking over the apple cart. And is there a better way to do this? Can we do it better? I know we've been doing it this way for so long, but how can it be made better? And through that, we can realize a lot of the advantages that our customers are looking for. Right? They're not looking at their touch panel to do what it did 10 years ago. They're looking at it to do much, much more, and without being able to adapt, and in many cases utilize the new technologies that are available to us. I mean, software technologies that are available to us. you won't be able to achieve it.
The other thing, Russ, that I hear a lot is there's no money in it for the integrator, for the CSP to stop and learn a different way to solve the same puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. If you're solving, to what you said, if you're solving the same puzzle, why would you change? The key is to listen to your end users and what they're trying to achieve. Because to your point, they're trying to do something different, or they aspire to do something different, likely, than what you have done. And I know myself as a programmer, there's a lot of times I've walked into a situation and said, I know best because I've done this how many times? No, I did that old puzzle 100 times, 1,000 times. Have I actually done this new puzzle? Looks very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Similar components to it. But have I actually done this puzzle? And I think we owe it to ourselves to ask ourselves, truly, is there a better way? Because is there a different, are we trying to solve a different puzzle? I think the minute we recognize that there is opportunity to doing more, to doing it differently, now that opens up the why we should be thinking about other tools. Because the tools we had don't always do the things that we have just discovered would provide value to our customers, would provide value for our business to deliver. I think if we look at it through that lens, it starts to give a little more clarity to the importance of that constant learning and that constant change, rather than just, here's a different tool to do the same thing.
That's a great lead in, Dave. And I wanted you to touch on what you're now doing at CTI and what you're doing moving forward. One of those things is AI. AI is something that I think has a lot of different meanings to different people. So talk a little bit about what programmers need to know about AI. And if you haven't seen Dave's posts online, they're really excellent. And he really does a great job of being able to show where AI provides value and that it isn't a threat, and it's a great resource. And so please check those out.
No, I appreciate that, Steve. And so I spoke quite a bit at Masters to a number of different audiences around AI. And I think, the first thing I would say is AI is part of a solution. But before you can really embrace it, you need to know what problem you're trying to solve. Just saying we're going to apply AI has really no meaning. One of the things we talked about, is there's sort of two categories that, to oversimplify here, I'm going to break AI down to how it applies to what we do. The first is our own productivity and the productivity of those around us. This is where tools like Copilot, ChatGPT, Claude, Midjourney, a lot of times generative tools can take the burden of tasks that we might not enjoy or just aren't places where we bring great value to spending time on. If I can take a task that I don't like doing and get it done quicker, well, that makes me more fulfilled. I can put my time to other things where I bring value, where my experience and my skill matter, and get a quicker result to get past the parts I don't like. One of the things I talked about in this realm is, we talk about, well, how do I apply it as a programmer? Well, make the old quadrant analysis. Make a 2x2 grid, 4 boxes in a grid. Across the top, on the left one, label it things I love, and on the right, things I hate. Down the side, the top box is things I'm good at and add value, and the bottom one is things I don't add value. Start thinking about the steps of what you do as a developer and put them in one of those 4 quadrants. And what it'll do is it'll start to show you on the productivity side opportunities to do things. You focus on that top left quadrant, the things you really like to do and things that you add value, and start thinking about the things in the other quadrant. Start with the bottom right one. Those are things that you don't add value and you don't like doing. Well, find AI tools that can help you accelerate through those. You probably can't stop doing them, but some of the best examples of where AI productivity tools have thrived are from people who are, I don't want to call them lazy, but people who don't want to spend time doing things. and that's why they look for the opportunity to get away from having to do it. So, a lot of the opportunity I see in this for a programmer is either writing a narrative or consuming requirements from an RFP, as an example. I get this big stack of things that a consultant said I should do. Well, summarize the damn thing for me and just get to the punchline. What should I be doing? ChatGPT, Copilot, remarkably good at that. Now, before I go any further, be very careful. Whatever you do with AI, make sure that you understand the data controls around it. Don't put public domain things in, or things that shouldn't be in the public domain in ChatGPT. There's a huge discussion around that. I'm not going to bore us all with that. I think we probably understand that more than many. But be careful about the tool you're using.
I'm just waiting for the inception moment where we have a ChatGPT scope of work in response to a ChatGPT RFP from the consultant, and it's just literally they're just fortunately it's an unpaid employee at that point that just goes back and forth with theirs.
We are coming to that moment where we're going to have AI talking to other AI commanding other AI to do things. We're very close to that, quite honestly, and that's okay. As long as we understand, the thing about AI, especially in this realm, I look at it like an intern. And so the thing is, would you trust an intern to do complete finished work that you just hand over to your customer? No, you would check it. And the thing about the AI intern is it's very confident in its results. Just like your intern would be. They are so proud of what they did for you. They hand it over like, this is I just finished my PhD dissertation. This is perfect. And you look at it and say, yeah, but you didn't capitalize your name. Go try again. And so AI is very similar. It will give you full confidence in what it did, but it's a communication game. How you prompted it drives what it comes back with results. The data set it's been trained on, it drives the results. It's up to us to be conscious of where is it biased, where is its gap, and to proof it, to make sure that what 20%, what 30% did it not get right, and to catch that. If we do that effectively, that can really speed our world up. We talk about coding with AI. Okay, write me a library to go do REST API handling. Yeah, you think I really want to spend my time building that? No, I want to do fun code. Same time, I better validate what it gave me back. So, back to the AI, the bubble back up for a second. So that's one half of AI, that productivity side. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for the developers. I actually challenged the programming community in one of the discussions we had about this to just go, if you're not tinkering already with this, get off your butt and start doing it today. One of the things I'm a firm believer of, we talked about education. If you spend 18 minutes a day, every single day, at the end of a year, you will be better than 95% of your peers in anything. This isn't AV, this isn't programming, anything. 18 minutes a day. It equates to 100 hours a year. All that aside, the other half of where AI has the ability to really influence us is on the analytical side. So this is the backside. This is what our systems are doing and the data that we have. Think of everything that every piece of equipment, every system we work with as a sensor. It's got a lot of data out there. These data points can be valuable. Not necessarily as raw data, but given a little bit of filter, a little bit of obfuscation sometimes, these can be really valuable. One of the things I was enlightened to, and this was talking with John Otteson at Masters, there's a number of Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies that he is working with right now. And their ask to the AV integrator is not use AI to do analysis and that. That's where my mind goes, is I want to use AI to analyze and to categorize all these data points and give me insights and drive it into my remote monitoring management solution, those things. What John was telling me was actually the opposite. There's a couple of really big organizations out there. And we all know they all have data science teams. And their ask is Give me the meaningful raw data and stop. Get out of the way. We got it from there. Their goal is to put it in their data lake, analyze it with everything else that they're getting from their building management system, from their environmentals, from the weather, from the daylight harvesting, from every other aspect, from their Wi-Fi density measurements. They're going to drive the utilization metrics themselves from all of their systems, not just the AV technology. And I thought it was amazing, and it opened my eyes to a piece of this of, think back to the early room view days. Programmers really struggled. And I touched dozens, if not hundreds, of room view installations. And very few, if any of them, ever really realized the value that room view could have delivered, because we left it to the programmer to figure out what data was important. It's a discussion that Fred Bergetzi and I had years ago, and it was one of my most memorable moments of talking with Fred, because we didn't train our programmers to know what was important. In this case, we don't need to know what's important, but what we do need to do is sanitize and build a common structure for the data we're going to give. So the example I would give is, if we're looking at a video signal, do we actually care if it's 4K, 1080p, or 640 by 480? Or do we just care that there's sync present? Well, some devices give us the flag for sync being there or not. Others give us the resolution. Well, if we just pass all of that and just puke it into a data lake, well, we made a mess. But if we go and say, regardless of the size of room that I've got in an organization, I'm going to pass along when there was video signal connected to each of the connection points and when there wasn't. I'm going to pass what was visible on a display from the routing system. I'm going to pass when it was in a call and even what the volume level was, things like that. Pass that all along to a data lake. Now let the end user go and their data science team start to go and really analyze it. There's a lot of opportunity there. And there's a lot of area that in our industry we're not talking about with our customers. And if we're not careful, our customers are going to go around us and they're going to get the information. At the same time, we've got the ability to be the heroes to them, to speed them up on these journeys. And all we got to do is ask, are you doing this? And our stakeholders probably aren't aware, but we push them. And not push them that we need to do it, but do you, my AV stakeholder, here's an opportunity for you to go be a hero to someone above you in your org, to someone who this does matter to in your org. Put in that context, I've seen this be a successful discussion track, and we set our end users up to be the heroes. We provide greater value, and now as a firm, our firm becomes the one who brought the value that no one else did. We've become sticky with that organization, and it's harder for them to go shop us around at a point where, otherwise they might be trying to shop on price. So a lot in there. Love to get, Russ and Rich, your guys' take on the AI side of things here. But for me, those are the discussions that we had a lot of at Masters, had a lot of sidebars along this. And I'm inspired by those who I talked with who are trying things. And I would challenge anyone who's not to jump in the water. It's not scary. And frankly, a lot of this is life skills from today forward that we're all going to need to have. So get them quick.
I love your concept and actionable exercise of the of the boxes, Dave. That's fantastic. I think looking at metrics and data, and you talk about the actionable data. You can provide thousands and thousands of data points, and they can all generate thousands and thousands of messages that within 2 or 3 days someone just filtered, and no one ever looked at again. I think that there's a huge opportunity in AI for all of that data to still be ingested, because I think depending on how you're looking at the problem, the installation, the system, you may want different things, and understanding why, of course, is where we start with that. But if there are 15 different incidents, events that occur, or 100 different events that occur when you're monitoring everything from servers through switches, through cores, through down to MTRs into the room, down to the display in the room, let's call it 25 emails, was actually one incident. And that one email should actually just contain, there was an incident here with this device, and here were the results here was the impacting or elements that were impacted by it. That's something that one email that everyone who gets it will pay attention to, and it tells the story.
And how about go one step further? Because we had those 20 events that led to the one incident, let me analyze those 20 events and let the AI recommend what are the most probable actions from the knowledge base that could apply to actually remediating this solution, or this incident, I should say.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Rich, I know that this is something that you're going to recommend for everybody to get a part of it, become part of as well. What are your thoughts about how programmers need to embrace AI? I know we've talked about this on previous episodes as well, but I wanted to get your thoughts as we wrap up, because we do probably coming to the end of this episode.
I think Dave and Russ hit it, and from an approach that doesn't get discussed often, which is it's more of a personal productivity tool. How does it make you a better programmer by allowing you to minimize the effort required on things outside of programming? Just like Dave was saying, right? So the quadrants, right? It's not computer, write me a program. That's not what it's for. What it's for is exactly what Dave and Russ just spoke about a second ago, which was, you know what? We got 4 service calls on this project. I know you want to send me back on site. How can I learn to analyze the data? Distill it to a point to be able to say, here are the bullet points. Here's what's going on. Here's what we can explain to the client. And here are the action items that they can choose from. All of a sudden now you just spent, let's say, 30 minutes on what could have been an on-site visit, meeting with all of the players in it, sitting there pushing buttons, testing things. Oh, did the display come on? Oh, did the display, right? All of the things, even if you're doing it remotely, right?
That's a great point right there. It's one of the things that I think is the lowest hanging fruit for a programmer to use AI for. Write your test cases. Put your method into AI and say, write me my test cases for this. How much test case coverage do you have in your code base today? I mean, listeners can ask themselves that question. And how quickly can you get to 75% coverage with very little effort?
Well, Oliver was great. I know that Oliver had a class basically about that, which is, these are the tools that, and throw the term around that real software development is about, but it's true. It's about taking those tools and on top of it, the sharing of the tools and the way you've done it. I'm going to give props to Steve. I know Steve, he's published free tools to help out. Pepperdash has done some of their work where they put out essentials and some of these things that it's tough. It's tough being on the front and pushing it out, because you don't know what the response is going to be, but somebody's got to be first, right? And then, once traction kind of comes through, it was like, oh yeah, this is great. We all should have been doing it. Yeah, but you weren't the first. You just waited until everybody else did it. I think that what you, Dave, and Russ are talking about is that it is a safe place to practice being the first, right? Because there's no harm necessarily. And like you said, and it's a perfect analogy. It's like you're throwing it at the intern. The intern says, look what I did, right?
Just remember that your intern has a very big mouth.
Yeah, but you can sit there and you can go, okay, that didn't work, but now I can iterate. Because again, it's just like programming. It's just like software development at that point. It's your iterations, right? Your first program out of the chute isn't going to work 100% like you intended, because there's variables, but you go through iterations. I think the hardest part, and I know it was for me, and it is like, my wife's in education. She and her team are all in with machine learning and machine intelligence, because of how it works in the education process and the sheer amount of data, and just, and I see it. I see how it's so powerful for what they're doing in the time savings of working on their own things to make them more productive. Like Dave said, in the upper left corner of do what you want, and let this do the things that you're not good at, but still need to get done.
Well, the other thing, Rich, I would throw to that is a lot of the success, especially when it's generative AI, is around communication. It's not the technicalness of it all. It's how do you communicate effectively with that AI to get the results you want. And the biggest thing I would encourage people to do is if, a lot of times these are intended to be iterative. So, I would, say, if you're going to say, write me a snippet of code, don't just take the snippet of code that you get back and try to edit it yourself and try to muscle through making it fit. Because we know we are in a business of getting perfection. We want to own the experience to the 100% mark. And so AI code's probably not going to ever get us completely there. So iterate with the AI though. Go back to it and say, okay, but add a handler, an event handler for this. Add the coverage for this test case. Go let it do the hard work of figuring out how to address the concern, but make sure you're communicating effectively with where you want it to improve. Where do you want the intern to focus on some more so they can go back and try to be effective? And again, because if AI generates code for you, if AI generates any result for you, and you have to spend 50% more time fitting it in, well, that doesn't make sense. Tell the intern to go back and try it again.
And this intern, its feelings don't get hurt. And that's an important thing. Its feelings don't get hurt. It's not sitting there saying, well, you're saying that my code sucks and I'm not going to, right? You're not all sitting in a conference room, right? And sitting there or in the lab or in the test space. You have the ability to say, nope, not right. Do it again. And if you say it 10, 20, 30 times, it's not going to sit there and, and storm out of the office. But that's important, and not to abuse it at the same time, because you do have to understand, I'm still working with humans and working in a team environment, all of these things, right? Not everybody is going to, you're not going to have 10 little breathing chat GPTs running around doing your bidding. But like you just said, it is the ability to iterate and to refine your process to communicate, which then makes you a better communicator when you're dealing with a UX team. If you're not doing the UX, to be able to deal with, somebody who it may be another developer who you can go ahead and send out and work your way through. But, you bring up a great point in that by using it, it is going to force you to be a better manager and communicator, because you have to learn how to manage and communicate your thoughts out. And fortunately, in a safe place where it doesn't take offense over how you say it.
Right. And, the last thing I would just leave with, and this was a big point that, I shared with all the audiences at Masters, was, this idea that AI is going to replace people, I think is misfounded. The key, though, is people with AI tools will very much displace people without AI tools. And I think we are gonna see that in our ranks very quickly. I think we already are seeing cases of that. And so I would leave that as just inspiration on, this is something that at some point we're all going to have to reckon with, starting to beef up our skills. You guys had mentioned earlier, I try on LinkedIn to post very concise and very actionable things as I'm learning them or as I'm sharing them with others, because there are a ton of resources out there that are showing just, small snippets, little at a time. We all know how we eat the elephant, one bite at a time. This is no different. Start small. Start with just something that's in that bottom left quadrant and build from there. And you will be surprised how quickly you're actually finding benefit from a lot of the AI tools out there.
Well, I do have to wrap this one up, but this is such a great conversation, and I'm glad we were able to have a follow-up to our first episode of the State of Control on Masters, which again, you can check out at episode 116. And I'm sure we're going to have a continuation to this, but thank you guys for a great conversation. Dave Hatz, how can people get in touch with you, learn more about CTI, your new role, and talk about AI?
Yeah, so the best place is probably on LinkedIn. That's probably where I hang out the most. Certainly, check out CTI.com. And full disclosure, CTI is the parent company of AVNation here. But it's definitely an area I'm extremely passionate about. and happy to share ideas and bounce thoughts back and forth with anyone on ways that they might become more productive with leveraging AI.
Thanks again for being with us. Russ Noble from ClearAlan, how can people get in touch with you, learn more about your company, and also continue this conversation? And thanks for being such a great guest.
Thanks for having me. And I can be found like Dave on LinkedIn and our company at clearalan.ca, CLEARALAN.ca.
And last but not least, Rich, how can people get in touch with you, continue this conversation, learn more what you're up to, and check out things that you're doing?
You can find me on the interwebs. Typically, type in my name, things will pop up. It might be beer, cats, and programming, but never know what order it'll be in. You can find me on all of the socials, Facebook, X, LinkedIn, all of those. But hopefully where you will find me, as I say always. So I hope you find me here on AVNation.tv. With our full suite of shows and all of our verticals, here with my partner Steve Greenblatt on A State of Control, or Resi Week, or AV Week, or tons and tons of other great shows that are out there. So would love for you to find all of us there for all of your technology needs, and supporting our sponsors along the way.
And I will add too, AVNation has done a couple of specials on AI, so please check those out as well if you want to take a look and learn more and hear more about this conversation. I think this is going to be something that's ongoing. I'm glad it was brought up at Masters, and I'm glad we're able to share some forward thinking. And as Russ said before, we need some inspiration for moving forward, and I think that this could be one of those things. So as programmers, it's important that we're embracing the future, and I think AI is part of that. For me, you could reach me at Steve Greenblatt on social media, my company Control Concepts at controlconcepts.net, and make sure that you like and subscribe and share a comment and let us know what you want to hear more about on A State of Control. We definitely want to hear from you. We would like to continue this conversation. If you want, please join us in leaving some comments or reach out to any of us to further the discussion. And until next time, this has been A State of Control,
the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.